My name is Clarissa del Rosario. I'm a school teacher, a single mother, and until recently I thought I had seen the worst life could throw at me. But nothing prepared me for what happened on the morning of April 28, 2025. That was the day I died. For 7 full minutes, I crossed over, and in that thin veil between life and eternity, Jesus Christ Himself appeared to me, and He showed me things no one is ready for. He showed me four events coming in May 2025, and they are not just symbolic, they are real, visible, and terrifying. This is not a dream, this is not a story I made up to feel special. This is a warning, one I can't keep to myself. That Monday started just like any other. I had just dropped off my daughter at school, kissed her forehead, and reminded her to eat her lunch. I remember her little hand waving as she walked away. She was wearing her favorite pink ribbon. That's the last earthly image I remember with clarity. Then I walked down EDSA planning to catch a jeepney near Cubao. I was thinking about the lesson plan I was preparing for my students about patience of all things. Life felt rushed, but manageable. The sun was out, and the streets buzzed like always. But within minutes, everything changed. As I stepped onto the crosswalk, a loud engine roar pulled my attention. A jeepney blue full of passengers came hurtling down the road. I don't know if the brakes failed or the driver panicked, but I only had seconds. I remember the sound of metal. My body flung backward. People screamed. And then, silence. Not darkness, not cold, just silence. It was as if time hit pause. And in that moment, I felt myself rising. I know how crazy this sounds, but I'm telling you, I watched my body from above, lying still on the ground. People running. A vendor dropped his tray of taho. A nurse from the nearby clinic bent over me shouting my name. But I wasn't there. I was somewhere else. I was suspended in warmth, surrounded by a light that wasn't just bright, it was alive. It didn't blind me. It embraced me. It recognized me. Then the light shifted, and suddenly I wasn't alone. He stood there, Jesus. No introduction was needed. Every part of me already knew. His eyes were endless, his face full of gentleness and fire all at once. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just cried. And the tears didn't fall. They rose.
Clarissa,
He said with a voice that echoed through the very core of who I was.
you are not here by accident. I brought you for a reason. What I will show you is coming soon. You must go back and warn them.
I trembled, not out of fear, but out of awe.
In May 2025, 4 signs will appear. The world will not be the same afterward, but those who have eyes to see will understand. You will help them.
I had no breath, no pulse, but I felt more alive than I had ever been. That moment, his words became the fire in my bones. A mission, a responsibility. I thought my story ended with death, but it was only just beginning. I was never the kind of woman who thought her life would become a warning to the world. I was a mother, a teacher, a quiet follower of Christ. I didn't post my faith online. I didn't preach on street corners. I simply believed in my heart and tried to live a life of quiet faith and purpose. My days were always full but never dramatic. Every morning I'd rise at 4:30, prepare a simple breakfast, fried rice, eggs, a banana for my daughter Isabel. She's 12, gentle, wise beyond her years, and the joy of my life. After breakfast, we'd pray together. A short prayer but sincere. Lord, keep us safe today. Help us be a blessing to someone else. That was our rhythm. That was our peace. The day it all changed, April 28, 2025, was a Monday. I remember because I had just finished grading essays the night before. My back ached from sitting too long. My mind was tired, but my heart was at peace. That morning I wore my cream blouse, the one with the soft sleeves that Isabel said made me look like a teacher from a Korean drama. She laughed as I tied her ponytail. I love you, Mama, she said. I love you more, I whispered back. We didn't know that would be our last normal goodbye. After dropping her off at school, I headed straight to the market. I needed to buy tilapia for dinner. It was payday, so I had a little extra. I even thought of buying her favorite ice cream. The sky was clear. The streets were busy. Jeepneys honked. Vendors shouted. Manila was alive. It felt like just another ordinary day. But ordinary days are when eternity can break through. As I walked along EDSA near Cubao, I saw a few familiar faces. An old vendor who always sold me flowers, a tricycle driver I'd often chat with. We smiled, exchanged small talk. Then I felt it, a strange pressure in the air, like the atmosphere thickened. The sky didn't change, but my spirit did. Something was about to happen. I didn't know it then, but now I know it was the veil beginning to thin. I was about to cross the street when it happened. A loud bang, screams, metal screeching. I turned just in time to see a large jeepney spinning out of control. The driver looked terrified. His eyes locked with mine. Everything slowed. I felt the impact before I understood it. A crushing blow to my left side. My body lifted off the ground, then silence. My head hit the concrete. My lungs gasped, but no air came. I remember the colors, bright red, blinding white, and the blurry blue of a vendor's tarp above me. My last thoughts were of Isabel, then black, but not for long, because the very next moment, I wasn't on the street anymore. I was rising. It was slow, like being pulled gently out of water. At first, I resisted. My mind screamed, I'm not ready. I have a child. Don't take me. But the body below me didn't respond. I saw people gathering their mouths, moving eyes wide in horror. A woman knelt beside me, praying loudly, but I was already above her, floating, looking down at a scene I used to be part of. There was no pain, no panic, just stillness. And then I felt something else enter the space, a presence. It wasn't a wind or voice yet, but I knew something holy was coming. It was like the air around me bowed, and in that moment I realized I was no longer part of Earth. I had crossed over, and my story was no longer mine alone. I wish I had the words to describe what I saw next, but no human vocabulary, Tagalog, English, or any tongue under heaven can truly capture the weight, the purity, the presence I encountered. I was no longer in Manila, no longer on EDSA, no longer in time. Where I was felt like the pause between heartbeats, the silence between thunderclaps. I was suspended in a realm where nothing decayed, nothing shed, and everything knew its maker. And then he came. No footstep, no flash, just the shift, like the way sunlight slips under a door crack gently but undeniably. Light surrounded me, but this was no ordinary light. It was alive. It didn't just illuminate, it embraced. It searched the deepest parts of me. All my fears, doubts, even sins, laid bare, but I wasn't afraid, because standing at the center of that light was a man, yet not just a man. He wore no crown, no thunder, no sword, only a robe, pure white, woven with the kind of simplicity that defies earthly fashion. His sash shimmered faintly like sunlight on still water. His hair flowed just past, his shoulders chestnut brown with hints of eternity. And his eyes, oh, his eyes. They didn't just look at me, they saw me, all of me, my whole life, my struggles as a single mother, my quiet prayers whispered alone, my sins, my hopes, my exhaustion, my fragile faith. And yet, those eyes only radiated love. Not tolerance, not pity, love that knew the worst in me and still called me precious. I dropped to my knees, not out of fear, but out of recognition. I knew who he was without being told. Jesus, my Savior, my Shepherd, my Creator. And then he spoke.
Clarissa,
He said, and my soul trembled.
you are not here by accident. What I am about to show you is not only for your eyes, but for the eyes of a nation. You must remember and you must speak, for the time is short.
His voice was neither loud nor soft. It was like thunder wrapped in a whisper, majestic but tender. It filled me, not just my ears, but every cell in my being. I wanted to reply. I opened my mouth, but my voice was gone. Only tears flowed, silent acknowledgments that I understood even if I couldn't say it.
You have been faithful in little. Now I ask you to be faithful in much.
Behind him, I saw glimpses, fractured visions of Earth as it is and as it could be. Cities in turmoil, children praying, churches sleeping, nations raging, mothers crying. And I knew I wasn't just being shown something for me. I was being handed a burden that would break me if not for his strength. He lifted his hand, and when he did, I saw them wounds. Still there, not bleeding, not raw, but visible. Proof that love had bled. And in that moment, my fear vanished. I didn't care what I would see next. I only cared that I was with him.
In the month of May, 4 events will come upon the earth. They are not random. They are not accidents. They are warnings. Mercy wrapped in disruption. A final invitation before the shaking intensifies.
I bowed my head. I felt so small, yet I also felt chosen. Not because I was better, but because I was available.
Tell them, Clarissa. Tell them I still speak, I still call, I still heal, and I still return.
And with that, he reached toward me, not to touch my body, but my spirit. His hand moved through me, and everything inside me shifted. My memory expanded. My senses stretched. I could remember things I hadn't even seen yet. I could feel realities beyond time, like echoes from a future already written, but not yet lived. He turned slightly, and the light behind him bent into a veil like a portal.
Come, let me show you what is coming. But remember, this is not to cause fear. It is to call hearts back to me.
His every word carved itself into my spirit like truth branded with love, and without walking, I followed. I didn't know what I was about to see, but I knew it would change me forever. There are no clocks here, no rising sun, no ticking second hand, no shadows stretching across floors to remind you that you're running out of time. Because in the place where Jesus led me next, time simply didn't exist. It wasn't that it was paused or slowed or fast-forwarded. It was gone. Time had dissolved. And in its place was something infinitely more real: eternity. We moved, but not in steps. There was no ground beneath my feet, yet I didn't fall. There was no sky above me, yet I felt vastness. I was not flying, not floating, just being. Free from gravity, from pressure, from pain. It felt like God had breathed me into a different dimension. Not a dream, not an illusion, but the truest reality I had ever touched. Everywhere around me, the atmosphere shimmered, not like light, but like meaning. The air itself held memory. Every ripple of movement carried history and prophecy in one breath. I could feel the prayers of children still being whispered on earth. I could feel the ache of mothers waiting for answers. I could feel heaven holding it all. My earthly senses became useless. There was no use for eyes, yet I could see. No ears, yet I could hear. No skin, yet I felt more alive than I ever did in my body. It was like my soul had grown new senses designed for this divine realm.
This is the space between.
Jesus said, his voice still calm, still perfect.
Few are shown this. Fewer still remember it. You have been permitted not just to see, but to carry it.
He looked at me, and his gaze didn't just observe it transform. The longer I looked into his eyes, the more my thoughts were stripped of their earthly distractions. My worries about my daughter, my regrets, my broken relationships, they all faded not because they were forgotten, but because they had been answered in him. We entered what I can only call the chamber of echoes. It wasn't a room not with walls or corners, but it had boundaries made of resonance. Every sound I had ever heard, laughter, weeping choirs, arguments were layered here in the atmosphere like clouds. But instead of being chaotic, they were in perfect harmony. I could hear the sound of the earth crying, and I could hear heaven listening.
Many are praying, but not all are listening. This space is where answers are birthed, and soon the veil will thin.
He waved his hand and the silence deepened, not in emptiness but in clarity. I heard thoughts, not just mine, others. I saw visions, not hallucinations, histories, futures, kingdoms that rose and fell in a blink of eternity. I saw people, billions, connected by invisible threads of light. Each thread was a choice, a prayer, a moment of mercy. And I realized God keeps every moment. Time on earth may forget, People may forget, but heaven remembers.
Clarissa, the world you left is tangled in noise, but here only truth speaks. The noise cannot follow you into eternity.
A wave of something not water, but more like glory washed over me. I didn't breathe it in. I absorbed it. It held knowledge, instant awareness. I understood the depth of my own soul, the way it had been created for communion, for purpose, for glory. I realized how small I was and yet how eternally significant.
Many search for answers outside themselves, but the map has always been inside. The light, the compass, the voice, they are planted in every soul.
He stretched his hand, and the next moment shattered my understanding of reality. We were now outside the earth, looking down at it. It wasn't like watching a movie. It was like holding a beating heart in my hands. I could feel the pain of nations, the spiritual apathy in churches, the hidden cries of teenagers lost in digital darkness. I saw skyscrapers full of people who had everything except peace. I saw slums full of people who had nothing but faith. And I wept. Jesus didn't say anything for a moment. He let me feel it. He let me absorb the ache of a planet dying of spiritual thirst.
This is why I brought you here, to feel what I feel, to see what I see, and to go back not with fear but with fire.
The earth began to glow not from sunlight, but from intercession. I saw dots of light, people praying, worshiping, helping others in secret. These were the lights holding back collapse. I saw grandmothers praying over old Bibles. I saw children singing to God on dirt floors. I saw a man refusing to take a bribe and a woman forgiving someone who had never apologized. And I saw what would happen if those lights went out. Darkness, cold, war, collapse, silence.
The line is thin. May 2025 will be a crossing point, a moment when many will either awaken or disappear into the noise.
My spirit trembled. I looked at him, at his scars, at his sorrow.
Come, daughter. Now you will see. What you witness next is for the world, for the Philippines, for this generation.
And as he turned to walk deeper into the unseen, I followed, not as a tourist of heaven, but as a messenger. Jesus reached out his hand again, and as soon as I touched it, the atmosphere bent around us like glass under heat. The space between dimensions cracked open not with sound, but with revelation. We were no longer standing, we were watching, and the first vision began. The earth came into view like a fragile sphere wrapped in tension. But then I saw it, a ripple of light moving across continents. It wasn't electricity and it wasn't fire. It was awakening. In the quiet corners of villages, in crowded urban slums, in high-rise apartments, something began to stir. People who had long been spiritually asleep suddenly opened their eyes. It didn't come through religion. It came through revelation. I saw people standing still in the middle of busy streets, gripped by something invisible. Some fell to their knees without knowing why. Others wept without understanding the source of their sorrow.
This is the first shaking. I will knock on the hearts of many, not with wrath, but with truth, and those who respond will never be the same.
It was not just belief. It was surrender. I saw young people deleting their social media in tears. I saw old men confessing sins they had buried for decades. I saw hardened criminals trembling as light entered their souls. But there was also resistance. I saw news anchors mocking the spiritual movement, politicians labeling it as mass hysteria, influencers twisting it into trends. And yet the awakening could not be stopped. It wasn't led by churches or leaders. It was born in silence, in bedrooms, in empty parks in the middle of the night. This was the first event of May 2025, the awakening of hearts. The light faded, and suddenly I was surrounded by crashing. Not thunder, but markets, banks, currencies. I saw financial institutions crumble like sandcastles under waves. The dollar, the peso, the euro all shook with instability.
What man trusted will now be shaken.
He said with sadness.
Not to destroy, but to expose the illusion.
Stock markets plummeted. I saw people staring at their screens in disbelief as retirement accounts vanished. Massive corporations shut down overnight. Death swallowed nations like quicksand. But amid the panic, I saw pockets of peace. Small communities began to survive, not through money but through trust. Neighbors grew food together. Families pooled resources. I saw small groups praying before exchanging goods not as a ritual, but as dependence on divine provision.
This shaking is mercy. I will loosen their grip on what was never eternal.
There was no total collapse, but there was total exposure. The god of money was falling, and in its place a slower, quieter economy was beginning, one built on honesty, generosity, faith. This was the second event, the storm of wealth. We moved again, and now I was in the middle of flames, not consuming fire but cleansing fire. Churches, homes, schools, all alight not with destruction but with worship. People were singing in the streets, kneeling in office buildings. An entire generation was raising their hands, not for protest, but for praise. I saw Filipinos leading prayer rallies under the rain. I saw Nigerians praying at midnight in the streets. I saw Japanese students worshiping quietly in classrooms. The Holy Spirit wasn't falling on buildings. It was falling on people.
This is the revival your ancestors prayed for,
He said, his voice trembling with joy.
and it will not be led by the famous, but by the faithful.
It was messy, raw, undeniable. People confessed sins in public. Witches burned their books. Addicts threw needles into rivers. Children spoke prophecies. Old people danced. The revival didn't wait for permission. But again, there was resistance. Religious leaders who had lost the fire tried to control it. Politicians tried to hijack it. Media tried to ignore it. But nothing could stop the flames. This was the third event, the revival of fire. Finally, we were lifted high, so high that I could see the stars forming patterns I had never imagined. Planets shifted, galaxies turned, and then slowly the sky lit up with what I can only call a divine alignment. Stars formed across, perfect and burning. Planets pulsed in rhythm, and a sound like a trumpet echoed through the cosmos.
This is the final sign. Heaven will speak, the earth will tremble, and all flesh will know I am near.
I saw people all over the globe stop what they were doing. Children pointed. Soldiers dropped their weapons. Atheists wept. Even those who mocked God felt the pull in their chest. It wasn't just beauty. It was truth printed across the sky. And written in the stars were these words burning like gold. The bridegroom is coming. Prepare the lamps. This was the fourth event, the heavenly announcement. As the final vision faded, I turned to Jesus, my soul crushed under the weight of what I had seen, yet lifted by the hope it contained.
You must speak of these things, Clarissa. The world will not believe until it sees. But you have already seen. You must become the trumpet.
And just like that, the visions were sealed within me, and the call to return was growing louder. As the final ripple of the fourth vision dissolved into the folds of eternity, I stood there silent, trembling, changed. The weight of what I had seen pressed against my soul like the roar of a mighty ocean. I could barely breathe, not because of fear, but because I knew I could not go back to who I used to be. The heavens around us calmed like the stillness after a storm. And Jesus, He looked at me not with fire, not with judgment, but with the most overwhelming compassion I have ever felt. A compassion that pierced through bone and marrow, one that saw every layer of who I was, and still loved me.
Clarissa, you have been shown what many will never see, not because you were more righteous, but because you were willing.
I fell to my knees overcome. I wanted to stay. Who wouldn't? In that place where time didn't exist, where every wound in my heart had been healed, where His presence wrapped around me like a warm ocean of peace.
But now you must return. You have a message, and the world has a short window to listen.
His words echoed like thunder, not loud but final. They rang with the kind of authority that created stars and split seas. But behind that voice was urgency and sorrow.
The world is asleep, Clarissa. They scroll through lies. They feed on fear. They chase pleasures that rot the soul. But in May 2025, I will sound the alarm. And you must be my trumpet.
I felt it then, a commissioning, not with oil or ceremony, but with purpose. A divine urgency coursed through my spirit like fire in my bones. It wasn't just a call. It was a command born from love. He walked closer to me not in a rush, but as if every step was sacred. And when he stood before me, he didn't place a crown on my head or a robe on my back. Instead, he placed his hand over my heart.
I give you boldness, not the boldness of men, but of heaven. When you speak, it will shake the lukewarm. It will awaken the broken. It will irritate the proud, but it will save the hungry.
I wept because I knew this was not going to be easy. He showed me quick glimpses of my returned doctors, standing over my body, eyes wide in disbelief. My family crying beside machines. Headlines that would try to discredit what I saw. Friends who would walk away, pastors who would question, journalists who would twist. And still the voice of Jesus remained steady.
Do not fear rejection. They rejected me first. Speak with clarity. Speak with love. Speak with fire.
Then he showed me something else. A broken generation. I saw the youth in my nation. Eyes glazed over by endless scrolling. Hearts sedated by dopamine addiction. Families disconnected by glowing screens. Faith traded for fame. Conviction replaced with convenience. And I screamed not aloud but from my spirit. Lord, how can I reach them? They don't listen. He answered not with anger, but with heartbreaking grief.
They do not need more noise, Clarissa. They need truth spoken in tears. They need someone who has been to the other side.
Then he said something I will never forget.
You are not returning to live, Clarissa. You are returning to warn.
My breath caught.
Many will scoff. Many will scroll past. But for those who listen, this message will be the difference between ruin and redemption.
I didn't know how I would do it, but I knew I had to. Then Jesus lifted his hand from my chest, and the warmth that had filled every cell of my being began to withdraw. The light dimmed, not because it was fading, but because I was. He looked into my eyes one last time, and his expression was fierce. Fierce not with wrath, but with love so intense it could split the mountains.
Clarissa, go and warn my children. Tell them the shaking is mercy. The silence is over. The trumpet is blowing. May 2025 is not a date to fear. It is a call to prepare.
And with that, I felt myself being pulled, not yanked, drawn, not through space, but through spirit. The heavenly sound, the peace, the music, it all began to fade behind me like the end of a beautiful song. And I was falling fast. The weight of mortality gripped me again. I felt pain rushing back, my senses igniting, the coldness of earth, the heaviness of flesh. But I held on to one thing as everything turned dark. His voice, his words.
Tell them, Clarissa. Tell them what you saw. The days are few, but my mercy is wide.
And as my spirit hovered in that fragile in-between, neither fully returned nor fully gone, Jesus showed me one last vision. It wasn't a vision of war or fire or even the stars. It was far more intimate, far more eternal. He turned to me once more, his eyes still ablaze with compassion locked into mine. And with a voice soft as wind, yet full of power, he spoke.
Clarissa, before you return, there is one more thing you must understand. Without this, all that you saw will be wasted.
He gestured with his hand, and suddenly we were standing in a vast glowing expanse that I can only describe as a sanctuary made of eternity. But instead of pews or walls or altars, I saw light, threads of light, millions of them. Each thread glowed a different hue, some gold, some violet, some blue like the sky before dawn. They wove and spiraled like rivers in the air, crossing each other, dancing and rising like incense that never faded. What is this? I whispered.
These are prayers.
Then I understood I was standing in a realm that held every honest prayer ever spoken, every desperate whisper, every grateful sigh, every silent cry of a mother at night, every trembling plea of a man in crisis. every hallelujah in the middle of pain. These prayers were alive. I could hear them, not with my ears but with my soul. Some were urgent, pulsing with sorrow. Some were quiet, almost shy. Some were bold, roaring like rivers. And yet none of them went unheard.
Every time my children pray in faith, it opens a door no darkness can shut. It brings heaven closer to earth. Prayer is not a ritual, it is war.
He moved his hand again, and I saw more. Families surrounded by invisible shields because of a grandmother who never stopped praying. Nations whose destruction had been delayed because of the intercession of the faithful. Children protected from evil because of a father's whispered cry in the dark. I wept, not just because it was beautiful, but because I realized how often we neglect it.
Tell them the true battle of May 2025 is not economic, political, or celestial. It is spiritual, and prayer is their most powerful weapon.
Then he took me deeper. I saw demonic forces crumble not by loud speeches, but by soft prayers whispered in surrender. I saw corrupt leaders restrained not by votes, but by thousands of unseen hands lifted in secret rooms. I saw revival not sparked by conferences, but by a child kneeling beside their bed asking for God to come.
The loudest prayers are not always the most powerful. It is the sincere prayers, the ones prayed in tears, in truth, in trust, that move heaven.
He showed me churches glowing like lighthouses, each one powered not by technology but by the collective prayers of their people. I saw that some of the smallest, most forgotten communities were glowing the brightest, not because of money, but because of faith.
If only they knew,
He said with grief.
how prayer shakes hell, they would never stop praying.
At that moment, I heard it a sound like thunder, but it wasn't thunder. It was the echo of prayer colliding with destiny. It was what happens in heaven when a soul on earth says, "Your will be done." I saw angels dispatched. I saw healing released. I saw judgment delayed because of one person's prayer, and I fell to my knees again.
You will return to a world distracted, Clarissa. They are drowning in noise. But tell them this. When everything collapses, prayer will remain. It is the cord that ties heaven and earth.
Then I saw something terrifying and beautiful. I saw May 2025 again, but this time through the lens of prayer. When the economic storm hit, I saw those who prayed receive supernatural provision bags of groceries at their doorstep, job offers. They didn't apply for peace that made no sense. When the cosmic event shook the heavens, I saw people on their knees, not in fear but in reverence, aware that the skies were no longer just stars, but signs from the Creator Himself. And when the spiritual awakening swept the world, I saw it was prayer that lit the spark. Not sermons, not influencers, but prayer.
There is still time, Clarissa. If my people humble themselves and pray, I will heal their land, not just physically, but soul deep.
And I realized then what we call the end may actually be the beginning if we respond in prayer. If we return to our knees, I saw Jesus look to the earth once more, and his eyes shimmered with both fire and tears.
The clock is ticking. The war is real, but the victory is already mine. Tell them to pray, not just for survival, but for revival.
And with that, the vision ended. Now that I've returned, now that I breathe this air again and walk among you, I see the world with different eyes. I no longer see random moments or coincidences. I see signs. I see warnings. I see mercy extended one more time. Every vision I was shown, every word Jesus spoke, every trembling moment in that eternal space, it wasn't just for me. It was for you, for all of us.
Clarissa, tell them the time is short, but my arms are wide. Those who turn to me, I will not turn away.
This isn't just a dramatic story. This is a wake-up call. We stand on the edge of something massive. May 2025 is not just another month in the calendar. It is a spiritual threshold. Heaven is calling, but are we listening? If you've watched this far, I believe it's not an accident. Maybe your soul has been longing for something deeper. Maybe you've felt the emptiness of the world lately, the fear in the news, the anxiety in our cities, the way people talk, fight, scroll endlessly but feel less and less alive. That's not just culture, that's spiritual drought. But there is hope because Jesus is still calling and prayer is still power. So now I ask you, not just to listen but to respond, not just with emotion but with action. Start with prayer tonight. Even a whisper is enough. Open your Bible again, even if it's been years. Call someone you've hurt or someone who's hurt you and say the words that heal because time is running out.
Tell them, prepare your hearts, prepare your homes, prepare your generation. I am coming not to punish, but to restore.
If this message stirred something inside you, if you felt the weight of it in your chest, if you want to be ready for what's coming, then I invite you right now. Subscribe to this channel, Pinoy Faith Stories, where we share more than just stories. We share calls to awakening. Leave a comment below, not just your thoughts, but your prayers. Let this space become a digital altar. Like this video, not just for the algorithm, but because the message must go farther. Someone else might need to see it. And most importantly, share this with someone who's asleep spiritually. You might be the only voice that helps them wake up. My name is Clarissa del Rosario. I died. I met Jesus. I saw the future. And now I've come back to prepare you. What you choose to do next will echo into eternity.
Those who have ears, let them hear. Those who have hearts, let them return. For my light will not be hidden much longer.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for feeling. But now go and be part of the awakening.